The metal known as Cortosis is playing a significant role in the Acolyte, being the basis for Chymere's armor, which he used to combat a huge number of Jedi. It was also revealed in the most recent episode that the Stranger's Island planet is rich in Cortosis ore, which may indicate that this world is in fact the Legends one of Baldemnik, the same planet that Darth Plagueis would kill his master Darth Tenebris on in Legends continuity. But we have noticed a lot of conversation surrounding the concept of Cortosis armor and weaponry, specifically why it hasn't been used by the Jedi and Sith more often throughout galactic history, as it completely alters the way in which lightsaber combat is approached. We have done an isolated example of a single Dark Lord, that being Legends Darth Desalis, who made an entire army using Cortosis armor, but besides that single incident, no other lightsaber wielder seems to have tried to employ this valuable material to protect themselves. Well, there are several fundamental reasons why this is in the lore, so we decided that in today's holocron, we will be talking all about Cortosis, its properties, how it's mined, and why it isn't used more often by the Jedi and Sith for armor and weaponry. Before we begin though, we've experienced a terrible vision through the Force. Many of the individuals that have been using our archives have not yet subscribed to our order, so if you've been enjoying the daily holocron uploads, be sure to reach out and crush that subscribe button. It is your destiny. We have foreseen it. Cortosis is an energy-absorbent alloy which has the capability to break and short out lightsabers. This has been its primary function and claim to fame throughout galactic history. Mara Jade Skywalker in Legends once said a comment on why this occurs. Her quote goes as follows: "I gather that if your lightsaber has dimetric circuits anywhere in its activation loop, hitting the rock starts a feedback crash running through the system that takes only a fraction of a second to shut the whole thing down." You see, lightsabers work by increasing its power whenever they can. When the plasma blade makes contact with the surface and the cutting process begins, there is an ever-running energy loop going through within the circuits. The more a lightsaber cuts, the more that loop actually returns power to the battery, which then redistributes the power. This of course is an oversimplified explanation. The core idea though is that a lightsaber is able to actually somewhat charge itself whenever it's slicing and cutting, but when it comes into contact with a substance like Cortosis, which absorbs that energy, the cycle is disrupted, as Mara Jade put it, causing a feedback crash, thereby disabling one's lightsaber for a few seconds. As demonstrated, this is an extremely deadly property for a metal to have against a Jedi. Apparently in the lore, there is only one kind of lightsaber that is immune to Cortosis and can cut through it, and that is due to a very specific kind of lightsaber crystal found on the world known as Mystere. These lightsaber crystals were able to produce a curved katana-shaped blade which could smoothly cut through Cortosis, and they were not widely known about throughout the galaxy. Mining Cortosis though was a pain, as in its raw ore form, it was actually very dangerous to be around. Cortosis ore was naturally energized, which killed anyone who touched it with their bare skin, and due to its energy-absorbent nature, it could not be mined by conventional means, either as plasma torches had little to no effect on it. Miners had to use hydraulic jacks to break away the ore one piece at a time. However, Cortosis ore was very hard and would quickly wear down the heads of the jacks. Not only this, but the dust that it produced while being mined would clog the pistons in the jacks, rendering them useless. Miners of the ore had to wear filtering masks because Cortosis particles were actually toxic. If entering into one's system, it would cause hair loss, illness, and sometimes even death. This was actually why Darth Bane was bald, because as a very young man named Desel, he worked in a Cortosis mine on the small world of Apatros. In that day, the metal was popular to be used by the Republic and the Sith Empire alike as a way to reinforce armor as well as ship hulls. By weaving refined Cortosis into Durasteel, it helped defend against blaster bolts and was very good at protecting the outer plating of capital ships. Cortosis was highly prized because of its unique properties. But that's where we get our first reason why it was not used more often as anti-lightsaber armor. Besides being completely useless and borderline deadly until put through an exhaustive refining process, Cortosis was incredibly rare. Like Beskar, Cortosis can only be found on a tight handful of worlds, including Baldemnik, Apatros, Duro, Niruan, Abridon, and Katano 7. Though by the time of the Clone Wars, Katano 7's Cortosis mines were completely tapped dry, causing its economy to tank as the Republic had no need for their role other than trade. During Plagueis' life, Cortosis was so rare and had been mined so thoroughly from the galaxy that some believed the metal had gone extinct, and others believed that it had been a myth entirely. Here's a passage from the Plagueis novel to illustrate just how difficult Cortosis was to find. A fabled ore, some have called it, owing to its scarcity. but even more for its intrinsic ability to diminish the effectiveness of the Jedi lightsaber. For that reason, the Jedi Order had gone to great lengths to restrict mining and refinement of the ore. If not the bane of the Order's existence, Cortosis was a kind of irritant, a challenge to their weapon's reputation for fearsome invincibility. It was to Tenebrous' credit that the Sith had learned of Baldemnic's rich lodes before the Jedi, who by means of an agreement with the Republic Senate had first claimed to all discoveries of Cortosis, just as they had with Adegan crystals and force-sensitive younglings of all species. As you see, it was because of its property that the Jedi ensured that no one could simply make for themselves as much Cortosis armor as they pleased. But there is another reason why relying upon it completely was a poor decision. And this reason that we have noticed is the most overlooked property of Cortosis in this entire discussion. Cortosis is very powerful, but it is also two other things: brittle and unreliable. While able to neutralize a lightsaber blade for a few seconds, through repeated strikes from a saber, Cortosis will eventually break. It is not invincibly dense like Beskar unless you use a specific refinement method. But this method wasn't discovered until 130 years after the Battle of Yavin. In the distant future of Star Wars Legends, it is what is known as the Legacy Era. Emperor Roan Fel and his Imperial Knights had managed to perfect and purify the Cortosis refinement method. This produced a material they simply called Cortosis Shield. The Fel Empire then made van braces from Cortosis Shield and applied it to all of their armors. This substance was known to be even stronger than Beskar, while still retaining its lightsaber neutralizing properties. But again, this is in the distant future of the galaxy. For a large part of history, refined Cortosis was breakable when struck repeatedly through brute force, as we saw with Jeki do this to Chimere when she hit his mask with her lightsaber hilt, doing so enough times to break the metal apart. The point is, while Cortosis had a very powerful property, armor made from Cortosis is not reliable, and therefore an overall bad investment, especially because of the cost in time and credits, including refining it. However, this didn't stop a handful of people in the Clone Wars from making use of it. Jedi Master Quinlan Vos wore a Cortosis fanbraid during the Clone War, and a few assassins also made use of it when they were hunting Jedi, and even notorious bounty hunter Cad Bane got a slice of the pie. Capturing the Rhodian Jedi Bulla Rapal, Cad Bane ingeniously employed the use of a slug thrower which shot Cortosis rounds. When the Jedi went to repel the shots, the bullets disabled his lightsaber, allowing Cad Bane to incapacitate him. Even the Separatist had attempted to use Cortosis on the Jedi, first developing a prototype battle droid called the CB-3. It resembled a B-2 super battle droid, but it had an outer shell of Cortosis plating. Anakin Skywalker managed to shut down the operation early on in the war though, but the Separatists would try once more to make this dream happen by invading Baldemnic, but they were repelled by the native species there. After the reign of the Empire, an Imperial admiral by the name of Galek Fire became obsessed with Cortosis and used it extensively within his own army. He had his own branch of Shadow Troopers which were actually lightsaber-wielding stormtroopers given the power of the Force and made into Dark Jedi. They wore black armor made of Cortosis, and Galek Fire himself also had a massive power suit made of pure Cortosis. He attempted to use all of his resources to attack Luke Skywalker's Jedi Praxium, but was stopped by the Jedi Kyle Katarn and Rogue Squadron. All of these are only mentioning a few of those who have attempted to weaponize Cortosis against Jedi. But of course, even the Jedi weren't above using Cortosis themselves. Following the Jedi Purge, a master lured Darth Vader into a trap, only wielding a Cortosis dagger. However, this proved to be a massive mistake, as he simply snapped her neck and then used the dagger against the rest of the Jedi. Many had failed to employ it effectively to bring down the Jedi Order, but it wasn't without great trying. Darth Decius had killed thousands of Jedi with his Cortosis army, but still would ultimately fail. It was a neat trick, one to try every now and then to catch Jedi off guard, but attempting to normalize this alloy into being the standard for armor would not really change lightsaber combat like people think it may. Cortosis wouldn't be the perfect tool until well over 100 years into the future in Legends. But anyway, my friends, this was the ins and outs of Cortosis, and why it isn't used more often by the Jedi and their enemies. So tell us, was this a question that you had asked upon seeing Chimere's helmet and brace in the Acolyte? And what is your favorite part of Cortosis lore? As always, thank you for joining us in the archives for another holocron opening, and may the Force be with you.